The next in our series of interviews with past winners of this competition is with the first winners of the over 40s category. That category was introduced in 2005, by which time the contest had been running for 7 years or so, and not every person entering was in that first flush of youth, and yet there were some fine dancers. And we thought it would be a great idea to have a new category that embraced the those not in their 20s or 30s for that matter. And so the over 40s category was born. And the first winners we have with us today, Sue Graham
Hello there.
and West.
Hi,
Welcome both.
thank you for inviting us.
I'm looking forward to hearing your memories. Jerry, you said before we went live that you don't remember anything. I'm sure it'll come back to you.
No, my memory is like a sieve. I can't remember what I did last week, much less what I did in 2005.
Well, we'll see if we can draw some memories out of you and perhaps start with Sue. I'm going to go back further. When did you first, Sue, enter the competition?
My very first one was 1992, and it was my first Sidmouth ever. I had no idea what to expect. Two members of Windsor Morris, Beth and Jill, said, "We'd like you to do this jig," and they taught it to me, and I went in the competition.
Excellent, excellent. And how did you get on?
I won it.
I knew that answer, but I was going to get it from you. Fantastic, fantastic. Jerry, when did you first appear in the competition?
I don't know the exact year. It was with Jameson Wooders. This is up at the council chambers, so it must have been those early 90s. And I remember watching Sue win, deservedly, beat us into some pathetic cocked hat somewhere. And yes, so it was around about the same sort of time that I started playing for entrance in the competition.
Mhm. Okay. So by the time we got to 2005, you were both seasoned performers in every respect. What do you remember, Sue? And then we'll see if we can draw something out of Jerry afterwards. What do you remember of that 2005 contest?
Well, I was quite excited because the last time I'd entered the jig competition was 2002. And I thought, that's it now. You know, the standard's getting higher and higher. I will, rest my dancing shoes. And then the category of over 40 came up, and I thought, oh, we'll have a go at that. And it was in the Manor Pavilion. And I do remember that at that stage, they decided to keep the house lights up as well, so that you could, as a dancer, you could see the audience you were dancing to. Whereas previously at the Manor Pavilion, the house lights went down and you were dancing to blackness. So the atmosphere was lovely. I do remember that. That's my overwhelming memory of that one.
Yes, I can remember there being a full house there. I mean, the jig competition is always popular, but this was a full house. Typically, as a musician, of course, you're not paying any attention to the audience. You're focused entirely upon the dancer. I suspect I wasn't even facing the audience, probably at an angle, watching Sue. But the atmosphere, as you say, there was always good for the jig competition.
Yeah, absolutely. Given that you've both been in the competition quite a number of times, I'll jump to another question. What is your best memory of the jig competition, Sue?
As a performer or as an audience member?
Either way.
Either way. I think the first time I won it in 92, it was almost like a shock because I wasn't expecting it at all. So it was absolutely amazing. So that is a huge memory. I think the other lovely memory I had was when the double jigs started, and I'm just trying to think when they started now. It must have been 2001 because Jameson and Simon won that. And then Tracy Seelig and myself entered the following year. So we were the first women to win the double jig competition. And that was lovely because you were up there with another dancer. as well as your musician. So yeah, those two I really loved.
Excellent. And
And
Jerry?
oh, go.
Yeah, it was the double jig competition as well, I think, and I have to say that I can't really say anything other than when I was playing for my family, my nieces Alice and Charlotte entered together as a double jig, and so Uncle Jerry played for them, and that was just magical. That was a really special experience. The other memory I have actually is of 2005 and winning and running down the aisle in the Manor Pavilion and hurtling straight up onto the stage, just to prove that even though we were over 40, we weren't crazy.
It's a low stage, Jerry, isn't it?
Yes, it's a low stage.
Okay. A main reason that we started this jig competition was to encourage jig dancing. John Gasson was always a very keen jig dancer. What I was going to ask, and I'll ask Sue first, how much has the competition influenced your dancing of jigs?
Oh, it's given much more confidence. Because when I first started, well, in 1992, being part of a dance side, we used to dance six up all the time, Cotswold, and you didn't get an opportunity to do jigs very often. So the jig competition, I think, opened that out. And certainly the jig I did, which was the Gallant Hussar, Windsor Morris have actually turned it into a 4-person dance, so you could double it up and have 8 people, 2 sets up if you wanted. So it's taught you to be very flexible about how you choose your dance and where you perform it. But ultimately that competition gave me much more confidence in my own dancing, I think, on a personal level at any rate.
Jerry, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, as a musician, dancing to one person, playing for one person, dancing is naturally very different. You really have to learn both to emphasize what the dancer wants to be doing and to work out with that dancer, usually unconsciously, who's leading whom. How are you going to be playing for that individual? What are you going to be emphasizing? How are you going to bring out the beauty of what they are doing? And I think that's been a really strong influence in us. Windsor Morris have always only ever danced until recently when we did a new tradition, but previous to that we only ever danced to one melodeon and a drum, so that the musician wasn't there wasn't a fuzzy band. It was a focused effort by the musician, and I think jig dancing brings that out to its ultimate. It's the bond between you and the dancer that makes the difference. It's the whole is more than the sum of the parts.
Yes, there's a much more of a dynamic really with just one dancer and one musician. If you've got 6 or 8 dancers,
Yes,
playing.
absolutely. I mean, it can work well with a double jig, don't get me wrong, but typically in a double jig, you've got individuals dancing half the time.
Yeah.
You know, they're only dancing together some of the time. And then, of course, the real thing is that the dancers have to be much more together in a double jig, because you can't get away with the fact that you're only one of 8 or something like that. You have to be, you know, on point with your fellow dancer.
No, indeed, excellent.
Can I just come back, because I'm just thinking of another thing, what has influenced audience. Because we started off in the council chamber, and then it moved to the Manor Pavilion, and then it moved to the Blackmore Gardens. And I think certainly as a jig dancer, as well as any of the set dances, it has made you aware of your audience and engaging with your audience. And do you do a dance in the round as you would at Blackmore Garden? Do you do a dance on a stage as in the Manor Pavilion? And so you adapt your dance and jigs for that. but I think as a solo dancer, you can really engage with your audience as well, which I really enjoy doing.
Yeah, and I think the Blackmore Garden has a particularly good atmosphere. I have to say it's an excellent home for the jig competition. The fact that you've got all those people seated on the floor so close to you, you're dancing right up to the audience, and then there's tiers, there's people on seats, there's people standing. It's a magnificent setting for a jig, for a dancer, and for the musician.
Indeed, I think it'll be our, well, I hope it'll be our home for a long time to come. I'm sure that we'd be filling the arena by now if it still existed, but...
Oh, the arena would be astonishing, but it would be very different, I think, because you'd have 1,000 people, but they're all, 50, 100 yards away. It's a very different feeling, I think, but amazing to do so.
Yes, it would lack the intimacy, wouldn't it?
Mm.
The competition, as you both well know, goes from strength to strength, which is fantastic. When we first started it, we thought, well, it will hopefully run for a few years, and it goes on, which is wonderful. And much has evolved and changed. Any thoughts about where you would like to see the competition evolve, or any changes you'd like to see in the competition?
That's a really difficult one, Chris. When I was looking through my photo albums for this interview, I realised 1996, the Innovation Prize was offered. And that, I think, was possibly stimulated by the fact that the previous year, a side called Jiggy Jiggy Jiggy, with Gary and Steve, his musician, actually did a backwards jig, and it was stunning. It was done in a beautiful tradition, flowing Cotswold, and there wasn't it wouldn't have won the competition, but it was a very special dance. And I think looking forward, I wouldn't like to preempt what I would like to see happen. I just want to be surprised, I think.
Okay.
I find it very difficult you don't know what people might create,
yes,
and produce. So I can't really answer that question.
Yeah, likewise. I don't think I've got any thing I would recommend or ask for. I think there's inevitable tension between wanting to win, which is an important part. It's very competitive out the back when, all the dancers are out there, all great friends, but it's very, we all want to win. But how do you encourage people to join at a standard where it may be unlikely that they'll win first year in? It's almost inevitable that unless you come in with something that's completely different,
or unless you're Graham.
Or you're Sue Graham, you come up, you're stacked up against existing expertise. So how do we encourage people to enter the competition, to bring in those new things, and yet make it such that not winning is as good as winning, if you see what I mean? In other words, simply taking part is really what it's about, and the winning is the icing on the cake. Because I'd like to encourage more people to be coming in and doing jigs, people who perhaps wouldn't normally think to do jigs. Their teams don't do jigs, so they don't do jigs. Perhaps we could get them to do jigs. That would be exciting.
No, I agree. We have the best new entrant. I suppose that's our attempt at giving some form of award to people who might not win the overall competition, but for the first time entry. What you were saying, both of you earlier, suggests that maybe reintroducing the innovation category is a thought. We dropped it because we felt its job had been done.
Yeah.
It could always come back.
Yeah, I have to say that I think that innovation, there's no shortage of innovation in the jig competition at the moment, and I'm not sure it was ever clear under what category you would measure innovation. How do you define that? I think the Audience Appeal Prize is a really good one because it certainly drives dancers and musicians to interact with themselves and the audience, which is what this is all about. So I think that was a really good move. Innovation, it might be that there's individual things that are worth picking up on, but I'm not sure whether an innovation prize per se is strictly necessary at this point.
Yeah, fair comment. As a final question, really, any other anecdotes, thoughts on jig dancing, jig competition either of you have? Sue?
Oh, I don't know. It's a difficult one, that one. I mean, I'd certainly, as Jerry said, I'd like it to continue at the Blackmore Gardens because I think that is the best venue for it. I don't think it can be, I don't know, can it be better? Things could always be bettered. I just enjoy it as it is.
Yeah.
I find it difficult to answer that question.
Jerry?
Yeah, you're asking the wrong person for anecdotes. But I think if there was any message that I would want to put out to people, it's to do it. It's to get out there and dance solo or with a partner, partially because it's about having the confidence to do that in public. And also because I think that the ultimate expression of dance is when you are expressing yourself through, you know, the medium of dance. In other words, it's something that you are giving to other people. And yes, you have to be technically competent for them to enjoy that. That's the baseline. But I think the thing about jig dancing is about expressing yourself as a dancer. And I think that's, for me, that's one of the highest things that you can do. And one of the best things you can give to other people is a bit of yourself through your performance as a solo or dual artist. So I would really like to see more people doing more jigs more of the time.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we'll end it on that. I'd just like to thank both of you for your multiple contributions to the competition over the years as dancers, musicians, judges, audience, and I hope that your relationship with the competition continues in any or all of those categories in years to come. So
Thank you
I hope so too. Thank you very much, Chris.
Welcome.